guys, it's Yuri Kasdorp here for another track guide video with Coach Dave Academy. Today we're going to be looking at Francorchamps and the LMP2 car. This is for week 8 on iRacing in the European Sprint and European Endurance series. And the series is normally not too popular, but I think this is going to be really fun combo to drive. And with the other things going on, I think you should. Well, so let's get going. We're up here in the last chicane. Bus stop before we start our lap. Try to get a good exit out of the last bus stop. We'll bring our car over to the left side, start our lap. Better for exiting. And then all the exit speed you carry from turn 1 will be carried all the way up to Camel Straight, because our rouge in this car is easy flat out. So all the speed you carry from the exit there is carried all the way up until they come up on top of the hill here. Try to bring our car to the left again. Purcell always wants to understeer. Patient here. And try to keep the speed up down the hill. All off track there, we can get exactly where the off track is in the video. The analysis later. Stay off the curbs in these corners, but as close as you possibly can. Exit here, very important again, because Dallara here is flat out again. And all the speed you carry from the exit is carried all the way to the last bus stop. Dungeon in this car is flat out. Bus stop again, we try to exit out of the corner. That's the lap in Francorchamps, the LMP2 car. Now we'll take a closer look at the lap here, the car. Starting in the bus stop, if you want to start qualifying, because we can, instead of taking the racing line, you can try to take a tiny bit of extra speed across the start finish line by going all the way to the right here. Trying to set up that exit speed, so you want to turn the car around at the pit entry here, and then using this bit of elevation to get a better exit. We're taking the racing line now. Coming out of the last corner. And it's very important to start lining the car up on the left here quite early. You start slowly bringing the car to the left, and make sure that way before you get to the braking point around here, you've got your car lined up with the left side white line. And what that does, it just allows you to take a look at the braking point, start braking in a straight line without ever having to worry again about how you line the car up. Last moment. Go from the cockpit cam. The brake point here is quite tricky, because you see the brake marker is behind this wall here. So what I do if nobody's in front of me, I use this bit of track here. There's a bit of dust. When this dust ends, I start braking right about there. This changes a bit with how much fuel I've got in the car, but that's the reference points I use for that. If you're behind someone, it can be very tricky to see where the braking point is. I would try to look at the left. It is around 100 where we start braking. But always try to brake a tiny bit early and set up the exit if you're really close to someone, and maybe get for that overtaking opportunity on the Camel Straight. So it's important we try to brake at about the end where there's brown stuff on the track ends. Try to keep the car lined up on the left in a straight line initially. Try to brake here. And then turn 1. It's very important we focus on that corner exit, because we've got a very long straight afterwards, which is uphill as well. So the speed we take out of this corner is much more important than the speed we take into it. Start turning in, we try to hit the apex, and we try to use the compression here, where the track goes from going down to going up. We try to use that to get grip in the car. Because the car gets compressed, you suddenly get a bit of a boost in grip. And we want to use that to give the car some traction when we want to go back on throttle. Meaning from the outside cam, we try to get our car to turn quite a lot before we get to the apex here already. So instead of going quite early towards the apex, we want to apex quite late and then use this the compression of the track to get the rear to stick on throttle. In slow motion, when I'm getting to this compression point here, I'm starting to bring in the throttle. And what the compression does is it makes sure that I've got enough traction on the rear end that I can go full throttle quite early. Get out of the corner. Got a tiny slide, but in the LMP2 car, if the car slides without hitting TC, you're still fine. Meaning that if the car is small slide on it, you'll see this more on the lap. If the car's got a small slide without hitting TC, then you're still fine, you're not losing too much time. So from the outside, it looks like staying left. Turning very, very late, and then just before you get to this compression zone, try to start bringing the throttle. And if your car starts understeering, if you go into the throttle in this hole, then it means that you've turned in a bit too early. You should try turning in a bit later. Again, we all do this. Head up the exit as fast as possible. Then on the exit here, they've changed track limits a bit. We'll go over that quite a bit on this lap. Track limits here are at the edge of the curb with your inside two tires. You can go over quite wide. Get to Eau Rouge. Eau Rouge, again in this car, is easy flat out. I'll play it once. All you want to do here is making sure that you keep the most speed possible. So by doing that, you want to go in as much as a straight line as you possibly can. Meaning that on the bottom here, you want to be close to that track limit. Track limit is about where you want to be with the left side over this brown stuff. You want to go as close to the inside as you can here. You don't have to go over the curb, you can, but you want to be at least close to it. And then on the left side, you want to drive over this apex here. The track limit here is with this brown thing, with the left side of the tires. You can go quite straight, and even though you have the grip, drive around it. If you drive over this, is maybe an extra 200 or 300 you gain for free. And those 200-300s all count up all the way up to straight here. Going up to straight here, slowly start going to the left. And then the comp here, instead of being all the way to the left side here already, we can try being a bit more towards the middle of the track. And what that does is it allows us to keep going left, and allows us to start using this curb on the left side here. Instead of going over the grass in a straight line to end up on this curb, we try to angle the car a bit towards the left. So we can use this curb on entry here. And we can use this curb because we're running a quite high downforce car, where we don't have to brake on the limit, and taking this extra couple meters on the left and corner entry is more important than braking super late, for example in a GT3 car, where you maybe want to run in a straight line. So we run all the way to the left and try to use a bit of this curb here. Shift down to second gear. Then in Le Com, in the LMP2 car, you want to be using the curbs on the inside. We want to turn in quite late, and then we want to use this curb here on the inside to get the car to rotate a bit. It's a bit lower speed and it doesn't upset the car too much here. Second gear here. Try to keep the curb on the inside and then have a small inputs in between the corners. The way you use a brake and pedal input, so brake and throttle inputs here, determine how the car handles. And we want to have the weight transfer to be fairly slow in these corners, meaning that we don't want sudden big inputs from the throttle or the brake. Meaning that when you want to go on throttle, introduce the throttle slowly so we don't suddenly have a weight transfer all the way to the rear and the car will understeer. You want to brake a tiny bit or brake very carefully so we don't suddenly have the car diving onto the nose and then losing grip on the rear. From this point on, we want to have small inputs. Again, for turn 2, have a small brake input here as well. Small throttle input. Start bringing the throttle slowly so the weight doesn't change too much. And then out of this left hander, we want to bring the car over as far as possible to the left. Close to this curb here. You need to be careful, this curb here, if you drive on top of this curb, sometimes the car can suddenly snap off. It can upset the car quite a lot. So you want to get close to this curb on the left without actually completely going over it. What that does then is it opens up the next right-hander. There again we want to have small inputs with our throttle. Want to get close to the inside and use all the curb on the left here. The limit is about, I think it's to the edge of this white line here, so you can quite a bit. You can either stay off the curb completely with one side. That upsets the car a bit less. Keep a bit more speed, or you can use more of the track. You can take a bit more entry speed and you sacrifice a tiny bit on exit. Straight after this is short enough so it doesn't matter too much, so that's a personal preference. Take a look how that looks like from the cockpit cam on full speed. Want to take the curb on the inside here, both sides. Have small inputs with the pedals. Just in general, keep a smooth line through here. Exit, you can use the curb if you want. And we can get to one of the most tricky corners on the track, Purcell. This corner, the car always wants to go straight. We're going downhill, and the front never really wants to grip here. It's a bit off camber as well, and the car just never really wants to go around the corner. We want to brake here around the start of this curb, and what you can do, brake and then go into first gear in the middle of the corner here. Get towards the inside, and then very late go into first gear. If you go into first gear too early, you'll feel the rear snap away a bit. You want to go into first gear quite late, and then be very patient with your inputs on this whole corner, because again the car doesn't really want to turn. But once we finally get to the exit, the rear can be very loose as well. You want to be very slow with the inputs here. On worn tires, what you can do is try to short shift the second gear. It will keep the rear more in check. But at the start of the stint or in qualifying, using first gear should be perfectly fine as well. Get you a bit of time on the exit because you have a bit more power, but the rear will be a bit more unstable. Coming off the corner here, you can use the left side curb a bit, but it's very important that we start lining up no name the next corner again. So you can go quite far to the left, you can use the curb as well, as long as we can get towards the right curb again to set up the next corner no name. More important than using all of the track on the exit of the corner. Get to this corner here. No name. No name again is a downhill corner, and a lot of times on the corner entry the car wants to understeer. The only thing to look out for is we want to use this curb as much as we can, but hitting this top part here, the blue part, can make the car suddenly either lose grip on the rear or lose grip on the front, and you'll end up straight on the wall. You want to be close to this edge of the curb with your outside tires, but never going over it. Going over it will be quite disastrous if it happens in the race. Might catch the car, but it is quite dangerous. If we go on here, you can either hit the curb here or slightly drive around the edge of it. If you hit the curb, you've got a slightly wider line you can take throughout the corner, but the car will be a bit more upset and you'll lose a bit of time on the exit because the car bounces a tiny bit over the curb. Get to this corner and we try to set up the exit well. And the exit here is one of the most important parts of the track, where you want to be as close to this gutter as you possibly can with the left side of your tires, where the off track is. The closer you can get to this gutter, the earlier you can get on the throttle again, and the more speed you can carry all the way to pull on down the hill there. You want to be as close as you possibly can to this gutter without going over it, getting you that off track, invalidating the lap. Get to pull on. Pull is another corner where it's very important to open up the corner entry. Look from the cockpit, we want to get towards the right, we want to open this up, and with our right side of the car, we want to drive over the curve even. So you want to drive almost on top of the curb, close to the grass. Opposite the last corner, hitting the top of the curb here is not as disastrous. It doesn't immediately upset the car. You don't have to be as afraid of it. The outside it looks like this. You want to be on top of this curb, trying to open up the corner as much as possible. Then into the corner, again the car will understeer a bit because we're still going downhill. And what you want to do to counter that is drag the brakes a tiny bit quite deep into the corner. That does put a bit more weight towards the front of the car, which helps the car rotate a bit. In slow motion, we want to keep the brakes quite long into the corners. Still here, we want to keep the brakes until the car's rotated and we can start going back on throttle again. Normal speed, we want to bring it all the way on top of the curb here. Brake quite deep into the corner. Keep the speed up, get on power quite early. And then the second part here, in GT cars you're still on the limit. LMP2 cars enough downforce that you can just go easy flat out. If there's traffic you can try to drive around as well. Get to the next corner. The next corner you've got two options. You can line the car up on the white line, brake in a straight line going for the apex. Or you can try to use the curb a bit as well like we did at Le Mans, where you line the car up slightly, not quite to the edge of the white line, and try to angle your car to go on top of the curb. Like we do here a bit. Try to use the curb here a bit, or you can just try to line the car up with the white line, which is a bit easier, a bit more consistent to get in the corner right. And the same as P217 here, you want to brake quite deep. And opposite to Le Mans, or a no-name, these curbs here you don't want to use in the LMP2 car. Go over these curbs, it upsets the car too much, so you want to drive along the edge of the curb the whole way through. And the same as in Le Mans, we want to have small pedal inputs from this point on to keep the weight balance of the car fairly similar. You don't want to have too big inputs, and once you come off the brakes, slow, small throttle input until you're out of the corner. You want to exit in about the middle of the track here. If you exit too far to the inside, then you sacrifice the next left-hander too much. You want to connect the corners and exit towards around the middle of the track. Then the next left-hander we have the same again, where we want to avoid going over the curb completely. We want to drive along the edge of the curb. And we want to set up the exit, so we end up on the exit, again, very close to the drain pipe on the right here. It's not as important as no-name here, because the straight after the corner isn't as big as no-name. So you can be a bit more careful with the off-track here. The off-track again is on this drain pipe on the left here. You want the left tires close to this drain pipe here. Then we get to one of the most important corners of the track. Just like in P217, we want to line the car up all the way on top of the curb here to open the corner up as much as we possibly can. Side cockpit view looks a bit like this, where we want to brake all the way on top of the curb on the left. Look from the outside. Car's almost here at the grass. And we do that to try to get as much exit speed as we possibly can. Just like the source, the straight after this is very, very long. So we want to make sure that out of the corner we can carry as much speed as we possibly can. We try to brake maybe a bit early as well. Braking on the limit is not as important as carrying that bit of extra speed. To get close to the curb here, you can try going over the curb a bit more. It's not as punishing as it is in previous corners. But the most important point here is making sure that the car is lined up well into the corner and you can go on throttle early. Just like no-name, very important here to use all the track available on the exit. The exit again is on this drain pipe with your inside tires. You want to be on this drain pipe as close as you possibly can. Going over that will get you the off track, will invalidate your lap. Getting close to that will make sure that you've got as much speed as you possibly can running up the hill through Stavolo, through Blanchimont, which is easy to flat in this car, up until the bus stop. You want to be as close as you possibly can. Stavolo here is flat out. One small thing to note, because it's a multi-class series, if you have a GT car coming up here, very important, if you're running close to the GT car, you want to make sure to maximize your exit speed rather than trying to get close to them and then braking in the middle of the corner. Making sure that you catch them full throttle with good exit speed on the exit will have you much faster on the back straight than if you try to drive up to them and wait until they've done the corner. So if you have a GT car here, you can gain a lot of time by just lifting a bit before the corner, then carrying more exit speed on the exit and making sure they can get the corner flat out. That's a small trick that can gain you a lot of time in traffic. In the LMP2 car, this is easy flat. Blanchimont as well is easy flat. You can use a bit of the same trick again if you have a GT car here, where you can lift a bit and catch them with more exit speed exactly on the exit. But because the speed is a bit higher and the straight afterwards is a bit shorter, there's not that much difference in time. Then we get to the most tricky braking section, I think, almost any track on iRacing. Bus stop. And it's so tricky because all the brake markers that aren't on the track on the left are so far away from the track It's very, very hard to see. So what I try to look at here, again, is a bit on this brown on the track, which is normally something that you not want to do, but there's almost nothing on the left that you can use. You can use this white line, but we can brake quite a bit after this white line in the LMP2 car. What I try to use is this brown spot on the track, and it depends a bit where in the stint I am, how much speed I can carry into the corner, how much grip my tires have, where I brake. With fresh tires, I start to brake quite fast after the start of the brown thing. So I try to brake here. We have two choices again. We can either line the car up to the left on the white line, like we do with the with turn 1 lassos. Or we can go in a straight line and try to angle the car so we end up a bit on the curb, like we do in Lecom. The easier part is to line your car up with the white line, but you can gain a tiny bit of time if you line your car up exactly ending up on the curb here, which allows you to take a slightly wider entry to the bus stop. Do here. And we end up on the left side here a bit, but make sure that when you end up on the left side on the curb, you're not braking in a straight line and then doing a turn while you're on the brakes. Inefficient. You want to brake in a straight line and end up there going in a straight line. Brake then, go into first gear. Then with the elevation change, you want to make sure to get the apex on the right here and end up at least in the middle of the track. Go from the outside cam. You can take a bit of speed over this first apex here and then end up towards the inside of the left-hander, and you'll be going a bit fast on the right-hander. Then you sacrifice too much speed on the corner exit. What we want to do instead is end up at least around the middle of the track. And then we can use this elevation here, where we're a bit higher. We can use that to set up a good exit out of the next left-hander. Around the middle is a good reference. Try to turn in, use the brakes a tiny bit. And slowly start going to the power again until the car can handle it. Use the curb on the right here, and again the drain pipe on the right here is how much traction you can want to use quite a bit of that. The way to go on power earlier here, by straightening the car up as early as you can. And you want to do that again by making sure that you're turning into this corner, not from the complete inside, but at least from the middle of the track or even a bit further to the right. Straightening the car up will allow you to go back on power. The car will be very tricky on traction here, especially with worn tires, so make sure you're patient building up that throttle. Go that too fast, the car will jump into TC and you lose a lot of time on the exit. There on, we just left out section towards start finish, and we try to line the car up again. Right, that sums up the lap time in the LMP2 around Spa. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to watch more lap guides every week. We got a couple lap guides coming up, and look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.